Have you ever had a moment that completely altered the course of your life? For Gabriela Torres, that moment came on a rainy Friday night in New York when her rideshare canceled 6 blocks from her destination. Lightning flashed across the sky as Gabriela spotted the glowing sign of Vesuvio Lounge, its warm golden lights a beacon in the stormy darkness. Without hesitation, the 20-year-old art student pushed through the heavy wooden doors, unaware of what waited inside. The instant silence that greeted her should have been her first warning. Conversations halted mid-sentence as she stood dripping on imported marble floors, suddenly aware this wasn't the ordinary establishment she had assumed. The opulence was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers, velvet furnishings, and staff dressed impeccably in black. It was clearly somewhere exclusive and somewhere she didn't belong. If you're enjoying this incredible true story so far, make sure to subscribe to our channel right now and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. This journey into New York's dangerous underworld is just beginning. It was then that Gabriela noticed him, a man seated alone at a corner table, watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. At 28, Antonio Ricci commanded the room without speaking a word. His tailored black suit and confident posture marked him as someone of significance, his dark eyes assessing her with unmistakable interest. A nervous-looking manager approached him, whispering urgently. With a dismissive gesture that silenced the manager instantly, Antonio rose from his seat with the fluid grace of a predator. Gabriela's heart pounded as he approached, his movements unhurried yet purposeful. Standing before her, she noticed details that made her anxiety spike: the small scar above his right eyebrow, the expensive watch, and the subtle bulge of a concealed weapon. His presence radiated danger and power. "You are lost, Piccola," he said, his English perfect but flavored with an Italian accent that somehow made each word sound like both a caress and a threat. "The storm is dangerous tonight. You will stay." Before she could protest, Antonio turned to the staff and spoke a phrase that would change everything. "She's mine now. Prepare the private room." And the declaration hung in the air, leaving no room for objection. I really should go," Gabriela stammered, clutching her portfolio tighter. "I just needed to get out of the rain." But when she turned toward the door, Antonio's hand caught her elbow, gentle yet unyielding. Sophia showed Gabriela to an elegant room with a bathroom stocked with designer clothes in exactly her size, a detail that sent chills down her spine. How quickly had Antonio assessed her measurements with that single glance? As she changed into a simple but clearly expensive black dress, she considered making a run for the service exit she'd spotted. The sound of footsteps constantly passing by the door told her escape wasn't an option. When she emerged, Antonio was waiting, having exchanged his jacket for a cashmere sweater that made him look deceptively approachable. "Better, no?" he asked, dark eyes appraising her transformation. "Are you going to hurt me?" Gabriela asked directly, lifting her chin with a courage she didn't entirely feel. Something flashed in Antonio's eyes, surprise, perhaps respect, before his expression settled. "I don't hurt innocent people who stumble into situations they don't understand," he replied. "But I am curious why an art student is wandering alone near my club on the night my biggest rival was found dead." Gabriela's blood froze at his words, the implication stealing her breath. "I don't know anything about that. My ride canceled, and I was trying to get to my professor's gallery opening downtown." She showed him the invitation in her portfolio with trembling hands. "I'm nobody important. Just a student who got caught in the rain at the wrong place and the wrong time. Please just let me go." Antonio studied the invitation carefully, then looked at her sketches with unexpected interest. "You have talent," he said, tracing a finger over a cityscape she'd drawn. "You see beauty in this city's darkness." A knock at the door interrupted them, and a server entered with a tray of food and wine. Once they were alone again, Antonio gestured to the small table. "Eat. The storm won't pass for hours." "My family has controlled this district for 3 generations, Antonio said as they ate. "Tonight, someone violated that protection. And then you appear, an American student wandering into my club unescorted. You think I'm involved?" Gabriela set down her fork, appetite vanishing. "That's insane. I'm an art student, not some kind of spy. Check my background if you want." Antonio made a brief call in rapid Italian. "Your professor confirms your story," he said finally. "But the coincidence remains troubling. Tonight is dangerous, and whether by fate or terrible luck, you've landed at the center of it." Gabriela spent the night in a luxurious guest room at Antonio's private residence above the club, her dreams haunted by the dangerous man who now controlled her fate. Morning light revealed a penthouse of tasteful opulence, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Her phone buzzed with worried messages from her roommate and professor. With trembling fingers, Gabriella texted that she was safe but staying with a friend due to the storm, knowing any hint of her true situation could put them in danger. Antonio entered without knocking, dressed impeccably in a fresh suit despite the early hour. "Your life has become complicated, Piccola," he said, setting a cup of espresso before her. "The Bianchi family believes you are important to me. That makes you valuable and vulnerable." Gabriella's art school life suddenly seemed impossibly distant. Just yesterday, her biggest concern had been her upcoming gallery showcase. Now she was caught between warring crime families. "I can't just disappear from my life," she protested. "I have classes, deadlines, a future I've worked for." "Your future changed the moment you walked through my door," Antonio replied, his tone matter-of-fact rather than threatening. "My enemies saw you. They know my claim. They will assume you know my secrets." He unfolded a newspaper showing a murdered man on the front page, the rival Antonio had mentioned. "Paolo Bianchi was executed in my territory last night, making it appear I ordered the hit. Someone wants war, and they're using both of us as pawns." Antonio's phone rang, and his expression hardened as he answered in Italian. The brief conversation ended with him throwing the phone across the room. "They've been watching your apartment. Your roommate was just taken." Gabriella felt the room spin around her. "Jessica? They took Jessica, but she knows nothing." Tears threatened to spill as the consequences of her accidental involvement became horrifyingly real. "This is because of me, because I walked into your club." Antonio knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "Listen carefully. I will get your friend back safely. The Ricci family protects its own, and last night, I claimed you as mine. That protection extends to those you care about." For the first time, Gabriella saw something beyond the cold mafia boss, a man with principles, albeit twisted ones. "Why would you help her? You don't even know me." Her voice wavered with confusion and desperate hope. "Because honor still means something in my world," Antonio replied, his green eyes intense. "And because I recognize something in you that I haven't seen in a very long time. Something pure that I don't want destroyed by my reality." This wasn't just about an innocent bystander anymore. As Antonio made calls mobilizing his people to find Jessica, Gabriella realized she was being pulled deeper into his world. And more troublingly, she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to escape it. Antonio's network moved with frightening efficiency, locating Jessica within hours. "They're holding her in a warehouse by the river," he explained, strapping on a shoulder holster. "It's a message to me, not a serious kidnapping. They expect negotiation." "Let me come with you," Gabriella insisted, surprising both of them with her determination. "Jessica will be terrified. She needs a familiar face." She saw his immediate rejection forming and added, "I'm already involved. Keeping me in a gilded cage won't change that." Antonio studied her face, weighing her courage against the danger. "You'll do exactly as I say, without question or hesitation. One wrong move could get us all killed." His tone left no room for negotiation. The warehouse was eerily quiet as they approached with 6 of Antonio's men. Gabriella had been dressed in a bulletproof vest that felt impossibly heavy against her chest. "Stay behind me," Antonio whispered, his hand warm against the small of her back. Inside, Jessica sat blindfolded on a chair, guarded by 2 men with automatic weapons. When Gabriella saw her friend's tear-streaked face, she nearly broke from Antonio's protection, before his grip tightened in warning. "Patience," he breathed against her ear. The negotiation unfolded in a mixture of English and Italian, tension crackling in the air. "You bring your new plaything to a business meeting, Antonio?" sneered the leader, a thin man with cold eyes. "How unprofessional. Your father would be disappointed." "My father taught me to rectify my mistakes," Antonio replied evenly. "The girl and her friend are innocent. This is between our families." Gabriella noticed how his accent thickened under stress, vowels elongating with suppressed rage. What happened next unfolded with terrifying speed. A nod from Antonio sent his men surging forward, while he pulled Gabriella to the floor behind a concrete pillar. Gunshots echoed through the warehouse as Jessica screamed through her gag. When silence fell, Antonio's men stood victorious. As Gabriella rushed to untie Jessica, she caught her friend's horrified expression. "What have you gotten involved with, Gabby?" Jessica whispered, staring at the blood spattering Gabriella's borrowed clothes. Back at Antonio's penthouse, Jessica had been safely escorted to her parents' home upstate with a cover story about food poisoning. Gabriella sat wrapped in a blanket, the adrenaline crash leaving her shaking. I can never go back to my normal life, can I? No, Antonio admitted, pouring them both a generous measure of whiskey. But I can offer you protection, resources, a new identity if necessary. In return, I need your loyalty and your silence. His eyes held hers steadily. This is my offer, Gabriella. Take it or leave it. With that simple statement, Antonio laid out the devil's bargain before her. Safety, in exchange for entering his world completely. And if I refuse? She asked, already knowing the answer from the shadows in his eyes. 3 weeks passed in a strange new reality where Gabriella attended classes with Antonio's men, watching from discreet distances. Her apartment had been declared unsafe, so she remained in a guest room at his penthouse, their lives entwining in unexpected ways. She learned that Antonio had inherited the family business at 23 when his father was murdered by rivals. Behind his dangerous exterior was a man who read poetry in the original Italian, who could discuss art history with genuine knowledge, who played piano in the early morning when he couldn't sleep. Your thesis project, he said one evening, examining her portfolio again. Why abandon buildings? Why capture decay instead of beauty? His question wasn't judgmental, but genuinely curious, as he traced the charcoal lines of her urban sketches. Gabriella found herself opening up to him in ways she never had with anyone else. I see beauty in broken things, she explained, moving closer to show him the details. These buildings were once someone's dream. Their abandonment tells a story about lost hopes and failed promises. Antonio looked at her with new understanding. You see the world as it truly is, beautiful and tragic simultaneously. His hand brushed hers deliberately. That's rare, Gabriella. Most people choose to see only one or the other. The attraction between them had been building with each passing day, undeniable but unacknowledged. When his fingers intertwined with hers over the sketches, Gabriella felt electricity race up her arm. This is a terrible idea, she whispered, not pulling away. The worst, Antonio agreed, his voice low and rough as he closed the distance between them. His lips found hers with surprising gentleness, the kiss a question rather than a demand. When she responded, something broke loose inside both of them. Morning found them tangled in his sheets, the city awakening beyond the windows. Gabriella traced the scars on his torso, evidence of the violent life he led. Tell me who you really are, Antonio. Not the mafia boss, not the businessman. The real you. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. I am a man torn between worlds, he finally said, his fingers playing with her hair. Born into a legacy of violence but dreaming of legitimacy. Every choice I make is constrained by history and expectation. A phone call shattered their moment of intimacy. Antonio's expression darkened as he listened, his body tensing beside her. I have to go, he said after hanging up, already reaching for his clothes. Stay here. Do not leave for any reason. What's happening? Gabriella asked, sudden fear gripping her as she recalled the warehouse confrontation. Antonio's world of violence was never far away, regardless of their growing connection. Is it the Bianchis again? Antonio's eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw genuine fear in them. My uncle has returned from Sicily. He disapproves of my recent decisions, including you. He believes I've become weak, distracted, and in our world, Gabriella, perceived weakness is a death sentence. Uncle Salvatore Ricci was everything Antonio wasn't. Old school, brutal, unyielding in his belief that family business should remain untainted by sentiment. His arrival from Sicily cast a shadow over Antonio's modernization efforts, and especially his relationship with Gabriella. He wants to meet you, Antonio explained, as his tailor fitted Gabriella for an appropriate dress. This isn't optional. Salvatore needs to see you're not a weakness. His voice remained calm, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed his concern. As Gabriella studied her reflection in the mirror, she couldn't help but think how far she'd come from the rain-soaked art student who stumbled into Vesuvio Lounge. The emerald dress, selected to match Antonio's family colors, transformed her into someone who could plausibly belong in this dangerous world. Antonio intercepted her troubled gaze in the mirror, his fingers gently brushing her shoulders. Remember who you are beneath these clothes, he murmured. Your authenticity is what drew me to you. Don't let my family strip that away. The car ride to Westchester was filled with impromptu lessons on Ricci family history, which uncles controlled which territories, which cousins held grudges, which aunts wielded quiet influence behind patriarchal facades. Gabriella absorbed every detail, knowing her life might depend on understanding these complex dynamics. "There's a formal way to greet him," Antonio instructed, as the estate came into view through iron gates. "Kiss both cheeks, right first, then address him as Don Salvatore until he tells you otherwise. And never, under any circumstances, mention the FBI investigation of 1998. The Ricci family estate in Westchester County sprawled across 30 acres of manicured grounds, surrounded by an electrified fence. Guards with military precision patrolled the perimeter, while luxury cars lined the circular driveway. It was a kingdom built on blood money. Salvatore held court in a wood-paneled study that smelled of cigars and aged leather. At 72, his wiry frame still radiated dangerous energy, his hawk-like eyes missing nothing as they dissected Gabriella. "So, this is the art student who has bewitched my nephew," he said in heavily accented English. "Uncle, Gabriella is under my protection due to circumstances beyond her control," Antonio explained, his hand possessively at the small of her back. The Bianchi situation made her involvement necessary. His tone was respectful but firm, a subtle power struggle evident. Salvatore circled Gabriella like a predator assessing prey. Pretty, educated, from a respectable family. "I understand the attraction," he conceded with a dismissive wave. "But she knows too much now. What's your solution to this problem?" Before Antonio could respond, Gabriella surprised everyone by addressing the old man directly. "Mr. Ricci, I didn't choose this situation, but I've proven I can be trusted. I haven't spoken to anyone about what I've seen or heard." Salvatore's eyebrows shot up at her boldness. Courage or foolishness, I wonder. He turned to Antonio with renewed interest. "You were always different, even as a boy. Your father indulged your idealistic notions. I did not agree then, and I do not agree now." The dinner that followed was an elegant affair marred by undercurrents of tension. Other family members watched Gabriella with curiosity or outright hostility, especially Antonio's cousin Marco, whose ambition to lead the family was an open secret. Every word felt like navigating a minefield. Later that night, driving back to Manhattan, Antonio's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "You impressed him," he said finally. "Salvatore respects strength, and you didn't flinch. That's unusual in our world." Gabriella stared out at the passing darkness. "He's going to make you choose between me and the family, isn't he?" Her voice was steady, despite the fear constricting her chest. "I saw how they all looked at you, like you're changing into someone they don't recognize." "My uncle believes love is weakness," Antonio admitted, reaching for her hand. "But I've watched how love for your art, your friend, your principles drives you. That's not weakness, Gabriella. It's the purest form of strength." The warning came 3 days later. Photos of Gabriella entering her classroom, buying coffee, visiting her professor's office. The message was clear. She was being watched by someone other than Antonio's men. That night, her art studio at school was vandalized, her thesis project destroyed. "This stops now," Antonio declared, surveying the ruins of Gabriella's artwork, his expression darkening with each slashed canvas he examined. "They're targeting what matters to you to get to me. This is Bianchi's signature, destruction rather than direct confrontation." Gabriella knelt amid the wreckage, carefully gathering torn sketches. 6 months of work," she whispered, holding the pieces of a charcoal cityscape. "My professor says I can get an extension, but the showcase is in 3 weeks." Antonio crouched beside her, gently taking the torn paper from her trembling hands. "I'll make this right," he promised, a new determination in his voice. "But not in the old ways, not with more violence." That evening, Antonio called a meeting of his closest advisors, including his consigliere Giuseppe, a Harvard-educated lawyer who'd served the family for decades. "Our legitimate businesses now account for 60% of our revenue," Antonio reminded them, spreading financial documents across the table. "The construction company, the import business, the tech investments, they're all profitable, all clean," he continued, pointing to specific figures. "We can complete the transition within 2 years if we accelerate the timeline." His plan was bold, transforming the Ricci empire into a fully legitimate enterprise. Giuseppe looked troubled. "Salvatore will never approve abandoning our traditional revenue streams, and the Bianchi family will see this as weakness, not evolution." The older man's concern was evident. "They're already making moves on our territory." Antonio unrolled architectural blueprints with the same precision he once used to plan territory expansions. Every floor will serve multiple purposes: exhibition spaces that transform into classrooms by day, community workshops that become performance venues at night. Maximum utility, maximum community benefit. Gabriella recognized Antonio's strategic brilliance applying itself to creation rather than control. "You're thinking about this like you would territory acquisition," she observed, not without admiration. "Except instead of taking over blocks with intimidation, you're revitalizing them with art and education." Giuseppe's weathered fingers traced the financial projections. "The tax benefits alone would offset initial investments within 5 years," he admitted reluctantly. "And the political goodwill is significant." The old consigliere was beginning to see Antonio's vision despite his reservations. "My father always said our true power came from community loyalty, not fear," Antonio reflected, his expression softening at the memory. "He believed the old ways would eventually destroy us. That sustainable power meant becoming indispensable to the community, not just feared by it. Then we use what they consider our weakness as our strength," Antonio countered, pulling out architectural plans. "The abandoned Crawford building downtown, we own it. It's been sitting empty for years because of zoning disputes." Gabriella recognized it immediately. A historic Art Deco structure she'd sketched multiple times for her thesis on urban renewal. "That building is architectural heritage," she said, examining the plans with growing excitement. "It could be transformed into gallery space, studios, community arts center." "Exactly," Antonio nodded, their minds in perfect sync. "We use our political connections for rezoning, our construction company for restoration, our legitimate funds for development. The Crawford Arts Center becomes our flagship legitimate project, and your thesis showcase becomes its inaugural exhibition." For the first time, Gabriella saw Antonio's business brilliance applied to something beautiful rather than brutal. This would transform that entire neighborhood, she realized, already visualizing the possibilities. Create jobs, revitalize the area, preserve architectural history. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Antonio leveraged political connections to fast-track permits while Gabriella worked with renowned architects to preserve the building's character. Her professor was ecstatic about the real-world application of her theoretical work. Unknown to both of them, Salvatore watched these developments with growing concern. "He's risking everything for this girl and her art project," he complained to Marco. "The Bianchis are encroaching on our territories while Antonio plays developer." Marco saw his opportunity. The men are confused by his new direction. They respect Antonio, but they understand blood and territory, not art galleries and community renewal. His ambition was thinly veiled as family concern. Salvatore's decision was swift and merciless. Antonio would be removed from leadership, with Marco taking his place. For his own protection, the old man rationalized, until he remembers who he is and what this family requires. Betrayal came from within. Antonio and Gabriella were reviewing final preparations for the gallery opening when Giuseppe arrived unannounced, his expression grave. "Salvatore has called a family meeting tonight. Marco will be named acting head of the organization. They plan to send you to manage our interests in Miami, away from the girl." Antonio's face hardened as he absorbed the news. "My own uncle," he said quietly, the hurt evident beneath his controlled exterior. "After everything I've done to secure our family's future," his hands clenched into fists before deliberately relaxing. "They'll never let us be together," Gabriella realized, the dream they'd been building together threatening to shatter. "Your family will always see me as the outsider who changed you, who made you weak in their eyes." "Then perhaps it's time to redefine strength," Antonio replied, his mind already calculating possibilities. "Giuseppe, who remains loyal to me versus Salvatore? I need honest numbers." The consigliere listed names while Antonio nodded, forming a plan. The Crawford Arts Center opening was scheduled for the night before Salvatore's family meeting, a timing coincidence that Antonio decided to use to his advantage. New York's elite had been invited: influential politicians, legitimate business leaders, prominent artists, and major media. "We make our stand publicly," Antonio explained to Gabriella as they prepared for the gala, "where they can't touch us without destroying everything the family has built." His strategy was bold, leveraging public visibility as protection. The transformed building exceeded even their ambitious vision. Soaring ceilings, restored detailing, and state-of-the-art gallery spaces created a venue unlike any other in the city. Gabriella's exhibition, Beauty from Broken Things, occupied the central gallery. As Gabriella adjusted Antonio's bow tie in their penthouse, a news alert flashed across the television. The FBI had arrested 3 Bianchi captains in a major sting operation. "Convenient timing," she remarked, meeting Antonio's gaze in silent question. His subtle smile revealed nothing, yet everything. The mayor arrived early, eager to associate himself with the urban renewal project, transforming a previously neglected neighborhood. "My office has been following your work closely, Mr. Ricci," he said, cameras flashing around them. "This is exactly the kind of private investment our city needs." Journalists circled Gabriella like sharks, fascinated by the unknown artist suddenly at the center of New York's most exclusive social event. "My work explores the potential for beauty within abandoned spaces," she explained, the months of preparation evident in her poised responses. "Everything broken contains the possibility of rebirth." Antonio watched her with undisguised pride, seeing not just the woman he loved, but a powerful ally who brought legitimacy to his vision. When his phone vibrated with a message from Giuseppe, Salvatore bringing reinforcements, his confidence didn't waver. Their love had survived bullets and betrayal. It could weather one more storm. As guests arrived in evening wear and limousines, news cameras captured every moment of the star-studded event. Antonio worked the room masterfully, introducing Gabriella as both the artistic director and his fiancé, an announcement that sent immediate ripples through both the social and criminal underworlds. Salvatore and Marco arrived uninvited midway through the evening, their expressions thunderous as they witnessed Antonio's public declaration of a future they hadn't sanctioned. The old man pulled his nephew aside, hissing threats that died in his throat as he realized how many witnesses surrounded them. "This is the future of our family," Antonio stated calmly, gesturing to the gathered elite, the legitimate business connections, the positive media attention. "Not territory wars and old vendettas. I'm offering our people prosperity without prison sentences, respectability without blood." The confrontation between old and new reached its climax as Gabriella unveiled her centerpiece, a massive installation representing the Ricci family history, reimagined as urban renewal, destruction transformed into creation. The symbolism wasn't subtle, and Salvatore understood its message immediately. In that moment, surrounded by applause and cameras, the old man recognized the impossible had occurred. His nephew had found strength in love rather than fear. Antonio had transformed their legacy, while honoring its core values of family, respect, and power. Thank you for following our story of forbidden love and redemption. If you enjoyed Antonio and Gabriella's journey from danger to destiny, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Your support means everything and helps us continue bringing you these incredible true stories of love against all odds.